I became a teacher so my students could perform well on standardized tests. Said no teacher ever. We got into this profession so we could inspire the next generation of critical thinkers and creative problem solvers. But how often do we actually teach those skills in our classrooms? Hi, thanks for tuning in today. I'm Terra with Blue Apple, and today we're going to talk about how to apply critical and creative thinking in our classrooms. A lot of what I'll talk about today was inspired by this book from George Curous, The Innovator's Mindset. A lot of great points in here about how to create that classroom with a culture of creativity where it can really thrive. So I'll give you some of my high points of that. We'll talk about what's important to know with creating a classroom that really supports creative and critical thinking, but also give you a few practical strategies that hopefully you can try right away. Let's face it, the world doesn't care what you know. It cares what you can do with what you know, how you can sort of apply those critical and creative thinking skills to real-world problems. So we have to give our students opportunities to create, really generate, not just consume information. Not only will this help your students be prepared for college and career, but as we all learned from Bloom's taxonomy, create is the highest form of understanding. So just imagine how much deeper the learning could be if creation was a non-negotiable part of our learning process. Now there's a Blue Apple idea. Let's talk about 4 things you need to know to get started. First of all, let's strive for an innovator's mindset. We've all heard about growth mindset and fixed mindset, right? Fixed mindset is just that idea that you believe your abilities, your skills, your talents are fixed, something you're born with. And growth mindset, you believe that those are things that you can actually evolve and develop over time with practice. Well, George Curous in his book takes it one step further and says, let's also think about an innovator's mindset. This is the idea of a growth mindset, right? You believe that those skills and talents can be improved, but for the purpose of creating something new or attacking a specific problem, right? What's the point of a growth mindset if it's not applied to real and present problems? Second, let's expand our definition of creativity. A lot of us, when we think about a creative person, we think about a chef or someone who writes music or someone who draws. But it's much more than that. We're all creative. We all can look at something and think of a better way to do it, or engineer a solution, or simplify a process. Those are all things that require both creative and critical thinking. So we need our students to feel both confident and competent in using those skills. Third, let's help our kids to embrace failure and resilience. Taking risks, making mistakes, learning from them and trying again. These are all necessary ingredients for learning, and they're key parts of integrating creative and critical thinking. Think about a skateboarder, right? We like to think that learning should be fun, but is a skateboarder really having fun when they're out there, falling down and bruising and skinning their knees every 30 seconds? No, they're taking risks, they're learning a new skill, they might make mistakes and fall down, but they learn from it, and next time they try again, they get a little bit better and a little bit better. That's what learning should feel like. You simply cannot have a culture of innovative thinking without a culture that accepts, even rewards, failure and resilience. Finally, we must make creative and critical thinking the norm in our classroom. If we want our students to regularly apply these skills, it can't be sort of a separate event that we make time for. It's got to be something they do all the time. It's not a thing you do, it's a way of thinking, a way of seeing the world, a way of embracing possibilities, a way of solving problems. We have to make sure our students are applying creative and critical thinking every day, so it becomes as much a habit to them as annoying their little sister or keeping up with their Snapchat streak. So there's our 4 ground rules, right? Number 1, let's strive for an innovator's mindset. Number 2, let's expand that definition of creativity. Number 3, embrace failure and resilience. And number 4, let's make sure we make creative and critical thinking the norm in our classroom. Now, what does this mean for you? Let's explore a couple strategies that you can try right away. The first strategy I want to share is something called the 5-word challenge. Challenge your students to convey what they've learned in a condensed form, like 5 words or less. This requires that they think critically about what information is really important to convey, but they also have a chance to think creatively, and how can I express this in only 5 words? And think about it, being able to simplify a message is one of the most sought after skills from employers these days, so you're really setting them up with a practical skill here. Let me show you an example with our 4th graders. These students just finished an investigation on food webs, and so we asked them to convey what they've learned in 5 words or less using Flipgrid, which is a great pro tip because you can set the time limit to be 10 seconds or less, so it saves you a lot of time grading and kind of reviewing their answers. Here's an example from our first student.
What eats what in an environment?
I really like how this kid actually told a story with his 5-word challenge, and I can't think of a better way to describe a food web than what eats what in an environment. We sort of spotted him an and, that's 6 words technically. But a lot of creative thinking is going on there. Let's look at another example.
Eating animals, chain reactions, the sad and sorry part, dying.
So you can see he had a little fun with this, even doing some jump cuts with this video. A lot of creative and critical thinking going on there, talking about chains and chain reaction. You can tell he really got the concept of a food web. Now let's look at a final third one.
Important, endangered, critical, and interesting.
So she took it to a much broader level, really this kind of notion of what this means for humanity with endangered and important. I love how all 3 of these students kind of took a completely different approach to it. And that really tells you it's a skill or an activity that requires creative and critical thinking. And bonus, remember I told you this could save you time? You'll spend far less time watching these short videos from each student than you would kind of reading all these papers or listening to all their responses one-on-one, and I bet you get just as much from it. The second strategy is one I call put the work in worksheets. Worksheets often get a bad rap, right? Because sometimes they're just asking students to regurgitate useless information. But in the hands of the right teacher, they can actually inspire creative and critical thinking. With this strategy, challenge your students. Tell them what you want the learning to convey, right? Tell them this is what I need to know that you understood. And ask them to come up with a worksheet that shows that they understood it. Ask them to come up with the prompts or the questions or the activities that would show that learning. You'll be surprised. They often come up with much more challenging questions than you would have come up with yourself. I once asked a student to come up with a worksheet to help us show what we know about the word exquisite. And they actually came up with a prompt that said to go around the school and find at least one way that every teacher is exquisite. So they built in a real-world connection, which was great, but even better, the teachers got a really nice morale boost out of it. Another time I did this with students, and when I took up all of their worksheets, they asked for them back because they actually wanted to complete the worksheets. Now, when have our students ever asked to finish a worksheet? So those are 2 of my favorite strategies for getting students to apply creative and critical thinking. But check out the download for even more. And how about you? What do you do in your classroom to get students thinking creatively and critically? I know you're doing some awesome things. So try one of these and let us know what you're doing or how these work for you. And if you want to see more Blue Apple how-to videos, please like and subscribe. And thanks for all you do in your classroom. We appreciate you.